Hey, what's going on everybody? Ferrix here, back with another video. In today's video, we're going to be going over Fire Mage Legendaries in PvP, how good they are, how not good they are, when to use them, and when to not. For today, I've created a tier list that we're going to be going over. I pulled up a few different pages on Wowhead as well, just to talk about some different interactions that you can have with these 8 legendaries. There are currently 4 legendaries for Fire, and there are also 4 that are for all mage specs. So I'm going to be including the 4 general ones as well as the 4 Fire ones to make 8. I will probably be making videos on Frost and Arcane legendaries as well. But right now, we're just going to get started with our first Fire legendary tier list. And without further ado, let's just get right into it. So first up here, we've got our Molten Skyfall. Damaging an enemy with 25 fireballs of Pyroblast causes your next fireball to call down a meteor. So basically with this one, hitting an enemy player counts as double, so you really only have to cast 12 fireballs of Pyroblast. If you know, you're going to be doing a lot of fireball and pyroblasting, playing fire in the arena. So this one's actually not too terrible. You can actually line it up where you're able to drop 2 meteors and then put into a combust window. You have pretty high damage actually if you're able to drop 2 meteors on a target and then get in there with combust. I've noticed you're able to get anywhere from 3 to 5 free meteors in a game. In a normal sized arena game, maybe 1 to 5 minutes long. So it feels pretty good. Not too many issues with it other than the fact you have to cast 12 fireballs and pyroblast. But like I said, the way Mage is now, you're not going to be casting Greater Pyroblast. You're not going to be casting really anything else. You have to cast Fireball to get your Heating Up proc in order to get your free Pyroblast. So pretty much every time you get a Heating Up proc, you're able to cast your Pyroblast instant anyway. So you get 2 right there. You only have to cast 12 to get a free Meteor. That's pretty much it. You can't really control it, unfortunately. And it does actually have a 30-second fall-off time. So if you're not casting if you don't get a Fireball or a Pyroblast off within 30 seconds of the last one, it'll completely drop your stacks, which I don't think is very good. If there's like downtime and you're not able to get those abilities off, or they kite you out in that time, you can completely lose all value from this. Fortunately, like I said, you only have to cast 12 instead of the 25, and the 13th one will launch the meteor. So I definitely think this one's a pretty good choice. Probably not top tier, but I would probably put this one at an A. It should be pretty good for most overall type stuff in the arena. All right, next up, we're gonna go over what do we got. I should go over some of the general one. We got another general one here. So this one is Disciplinary Command, casting a Fire, Frost, Arcane spell within 10 seconds of each other. Increases your crit damage by 15% of all spells. And it can only occur once every 30 seconds. So the main thing here is you have to cast a Frost spell, a Fire spell, and an Arcane spell within 10 seconds of each other. So the easiest way to do this is you're able to Fire Blast, cast a Frostbolt, and then you can either Polymorph, Spell Steal, remove Curse, if applicable, or you can Sheep. This one's pretty decent. You have a pretty big window. The 10-second window is a pretty large amount of time. With Frost, you can actually cast Ring of Frost if you spec'd into it. It's not a bad one at all. And then you get 15% increased crit damage on your spells. So if you wanted to do something like ramp this up before you pop Combust, you would pretty much get an additional 15% increased damage on your Combustion, which is relatively high. The only downside is it can only occur once every 30 seconds. So you don't get too much value out of it. You can really only get it on your huge Combust windows. And the thing is, you're not really going to be getting much value out of it outside of Combust. Maybe, let's say, you get it procced, and then you cast a Fireball and it crits. Great, you have a Fireball that now crit, it did 15% increased damage. Then you cast maybe a Fire Blast and get a Pyro. That all is increased by 15%. It'll do a little more damage, but nothing like too meaningful. And then it drops off, you have to wait another 30 seconds. I think where it will really shine is where you're able to get it in those big combustion windows, and your entire combust window will be doing, 15% increased damage at all times. I think this one's a pretty solid one. Definitely not the greatest, but I think it should still probably be pretty good. in general for Fire Mage. So I'd probably put this one like a B. All right, next up we've got, where are we at? Expanded Potential. So your Fireball, Frostbolt, and Arcane Blast have a chance to grant you expanded potential. It pretty much gives you a free hot streak. Pretty good proc per minute. You get 3 per however much haste you have procs per minute. Not too terrible at all. Pretty much right here, you're just getting a free Pyroblast with fire at least. So, you know, you throw your hot streak, you get a Pyro, you get another Pyro, you get 2 Pyros back to back. That is pretty much all you get. It's good for a little bit of burst of extra damage, but other than that, it doesn't really do that much. It doesn't look like there's really any internal cooldown on it that I'm aware of. So, pretty decent damage. Maybe you can, if you're playing like Rogue Mage or something and you get this off, you get maybe 5k more damage off a Pyroblast. So, like I said, not too terrible. Not too great though. Definitely there are some better ones out there. So, I think this one's also going to go at a B for me, personally. But I think it still gets the job done. All right, next up, we're down to the Fire Mage specific ones. We got Fevered Incantation. So each consecutive crit you deal increases crit damage by 3% up to 15%. This one's definitely an interesting one, because you have to consecutively crit for it to increase by a good portion. So the thing is, let's say you Fireball, it crits, there's 3%. Fire Blast is 6, and then you get a Pyro. If that crits, you get 9. Okay, you Fire Blast again, you get 12. Okay, so now you're at 12% increased damage. That's not too terrible at all. But it only increases your crit damage, so it doesn't actually increase your entire kit damage. If you really wanted to, maybe this one would actually be pretty good inside of a combustion window. Actually, a lot of these I've kind of noticed are really based around crit damage. So I feel like your combustion windows could be really, really large, depending on which legendary you're looking at getting. I don't think this one is too great, just because of the fact you could go 3, 4, 5 fireballs even without getting a crit, not get too much value out of the Fevered Incantation legendary. So it seems okay, but overall, I don't think this one is too great. Maybe during your combustion windows, like I said, you can get some pretty good damage. Obviously, you start low and ramp up to 15%. So maybe, you know, if you've got a few, let's say you fireballed twice and they both crit right before your combustion window, and then you pop, you've got maybe, you're coming in at 9%, ramp up with a few fire blasts, you're at 15% for most of your combustion window, so you're getting an additional 15% increased damage on all abilities, because combustion is giving you so much crit. It could be pretty good in your combustion windows. Obviously, with the changes, you've got something like Tinder, you've got Pyrokinesis, which allows you, you know, you get that short combust back. So this one could be pretty decent. Like I said, I'd probably put this one at a B. I feel like most of these are very, very mediocre. They're not great at all. I don't know why the C and D are mixed. Okay, hold on. There we go. I don't know why that happened. I feel like a lot of our legendaries, though, are very mediocre. They're not bad, but they're not that great. So that's why I'm putting a lot of these at B. You can't really go wrong with them, but you can't necessarily go right with them either. All right, next up. It's probably my personal favorite one. I really, really like this one. Super fun. Firestorm. So when Hot Streak activates, you have a very low chance to cause all your Pyros and Flame Strikes to have no cast time and be guaranteed crits. So you get a guaranteed proc per minute plus some amount of haste. I'm not exactly sure what that number is. This is definitely my favorite one by far when you're trying to have fun. How practical it is, it's not terribly great. It's also not horrible. It can really depend on how many procs you get. If you're going into a game and you get a lot of procs with the Firestorm legendary, you'll be able to do a ton of damage. Because you're able to get Pyros, and you're able to pretty much chain them for 4 seconds. If you got a 1 second global, basically when this procs, you get 4 Pyros for free. And they're all instant cast, and they're guaranteed crit. So they do relatively high damage. The only issue is the proc rate is quite low. So like I said, if you get bad procs with this legendary, it can be not the greatest. But if you get good procs like I said, you're playing Rogue Mage, you're in a stun, or the enemy's in a kidney shot, you proc one of these, You're able to get 4 instant cast pyros. Not only can you not be kicked because everything is instant cast, they're also doing pretty good damage because they're non-crit, or they are critted. And with the new crit change going up to 1.75, I feel like this is actually a really, really good one. So yeah, overall, definitely my favorite one for Fire. Feels pretty good, pretty fun. Just have to be really careful. Hopefully you get the good proc rates on it. This one's definitely going to be an A for me. But yeah, the proc rates are definitely where it's at. All right, next up, what do we got? We have Grizzly Icicle. So your fire and arcane damage against enemies affected by Nova is increased by 15%. And your spells no longer break it. This is a little similar to like the deep freeze we've had. It's kind of like a mini deep freeze. The really cool part about this though, and it seems like it's a little bugged. I was queuing God Comp and my Shadow Priest, I've heard that your teammate spells should break it now, but when I was queuing with Shadow Priest, it looks like Dots and a few of his spells just were not breaking it. So that seems really, really good for something like double melee that can't get out of this type of stuff. So you have that part right there. And then you also have your fire and arcane damage against enemies is increased by 15% when they're in Nova. So if you wanted to, arcane isn't really relevant here. But if you're looking to get a little damage off or something, like they're in a kidney, or even if they're not in a stun, you can drop Nova and then maybe Meteor on top of that for an additional 15% on your Meteor. If you combust into it, you get a guaranteed 15% increased damage on your combustion if they don't get out of Nova. Keep in mind, Nova's really bad against like Druid, where they can shift out of it. So you have to be a little careful on that, but I think this one is actually really, really good. It does what it's supposed to do. Your spells don't break it, and you can get some pretty high damage off of it. The only downside is Nova's on a 30-second cooldown, so you can pretty much get it once every 30 seconds. And sometimes you have to use Nova defensively, and you have to kite with it. So you can't always get the value that you want out of this one. But overall, I think this is a really good one. I'd put this one in the A column just for me. All right, next up, got a pretty fun one too. I like this one a lot. Wait, which one are we at? Oh, we're on Molten Skyfall. Okay. So damaging an enemy with 25 fireballs. Oh, wait. Oh, my bad. We actually already talked about this one. Sorry, actually, I have the wrong one here. We're supposed to put Molten Skyfall up here. That's the one we were talking about earlier. This is a Sun King. So actually, we're going to be talking about Sun King's Blessing. My apologies here. Just had a little bit of a mix-up. So after consuming 12 hot streaks, your next non-instant cast pyro within 15 seconds gets you a 5-second combust. This one is really cool, and it's pretty nice. The issue is, just like Molten Skyfall, you have that 30-second timer where basically if you drop your hot streak, you're going to have to farm them all back again. So that's not the greatest, but it is really cool. What I wanted to talk about here is the thing with your next non-instant cast Pyroblast. So if you go over to your Fire Mage talents right now and you go for Pyroclasm, if you consume a hot streak, you have a 15% chance to make your next non-instant cast Pyro deal 240% increased damage. So if you play this legendary, you already have to hard cast a Pyroblast to get combustion, right? So if you combo this and drop Meteor and you pick up Pyroclasm instead, you're going to be getting an additional 240% increased damage from that non-instant cast Pyro, and then you're going to be able to get combustion off of that. So you'll get combustion, you'll get the crit from that Pyro, and then you can start rolling into your rotation. You'll get a mini combust, which is really, really strong for things like Rogue Mage, where you have setup comp. You'll be able to do a lot of damage in a short window, and it'll feel really good. One of the main things right now I've noticed with Fire Mage is that in your combustion window, you're doing a lot of damage, but outside of your combustion window, you're not doing that much. So the more opportunity you can to get combustion is the best you can get, I think. So I think this one is really good. The only issue is you have to consume 12 hot streaks, and they have that 30-second window where if you don't consume a hot streak on somebody, you're going to drop your stacks. So I think this one is actually pretty good. I'd put this one at an A, but honestly, it could or could not be bad depending on what comp you're fighting. All right, and finally we got our last one here. I think we're going to talk about Try and Ward. this is probably the most boring legendary out there, but I think it is the best legendary we have as mage. This legendary is very good in pretty much every situation. You can't go wrong with it. So casting a barrier grants you the effect of blazing, ice, and prismatic barrier. All right. And each shield has 65% effectiveness. So not only are you going to be receiving a large shield, like 190%, so pretty much you're getting 2 shields for 1 every 25 seconds, right? You also are going to be receiving the secondary effects of each. So for Blazing Barrier, you have Thorns. For Ice Barrier, melee attacks reduce the attacker's movement speed by 50%, which is huge for kiting. For Prismatic, you reduce magic damage taken by 15%, and the duration of all magical effects, harmful magical effects, is reduced by 25%. This is huge. Prismatic Barrier is one of the best barriers in the game. Like, okay, Blazing Barrier is not bad because of Thorns, doesn't do that much damage, though. Ice Barrier is pretty good for kiting. Prismatic, though, by far, you're getting a 15% reduction in all magic damage. That is huge. Such an insane one. And on top of that, you're getting any harmful magical effect. Sheep, Silence, Shadow Priest Stun, anything magical, reduced by 25%. If you're playing human, you play Relentless, you stack that on top of it, that is a 45% off any of those. That is a huge benefit. And that is such a great perk of the Triune Ward. Like I said, this one's kind of boring, but I've been playing this Triune Ward very often. It feels really good. You can also use it for Purge Protection too. Instead of having 1 shield, you have got 3. And they are each purgeable. So right here, Triune Ward, I definitely think is the mage's best. The best legendary. I think in general for all 3 specs, Triune Ward is probably top. However, it's not as fun, and you don't really get the offensive potential like the other ones. You kind of get this, I'm going to tank up and hopefully I don't die. But it is just too, right now with the 65% increased effectiveness and getting all 3 effects of the barriers, I honestly think Triune Ward is the first legendary I'm going to be making, because A, you can use it for all specs, B, it's effective everywhere. The only thing, it's not that good in PvE. Obviously, you're not getting any offensive benefit really. But if you're PvPing, I think this is the one you're going to want to be in. So other than that, that is my tier list right now for Fire. I'm going to try to be coming out with a little bit of Frost and Arcane. I just wanted to talk about these a little bit more in depth. So I'm going to be making 3 videos on each of them and going over what can benefit, like what you can benefit from really well, what not. Honestly, like I said, the Fire ones, they're all pretty decent. I wouldn't really rate any of them too low. They're not the greatest. Like, a lot of these can float between, like, Molten Skyfall and Sun Kings, depending on who you're fighting, what you're fighting, how much time you get to free cast. These can rotate down even to C tier, just depending. Can you keep your buffs up? Can you keep the uptime up? Can you keep your damage rolling? If you can, they're really good. If you can't, they're not the greatest. Then they kind of get moved down a little bit. But overall, I think the Fire Mage ones are really, they're pretty decent. You can't really go wrong with most of them. The ones in the B tier obviously aren't the greatest, but even the ones in A tier could kind of float down to B, like I said, depending on really how much time you get to cast. So, all right, well, with that is my Fire Mage Legendary Tier Guide for PvP. Thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to leave a comment, like, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.